He was the law, until the truth caught up with him. A small-town sheriff with a big ego. A badge that once stood for justice now covers greed, corruption, and lies. For years, he framed innocent people to protect his own crimes. But this time, he picked the wrong man to blame. You know what's scarier than a criminal with a gun? A cop with a badge who acts like a criminal. Because when a criminal commits a crime, we expect it. We're ready for it. Society has systems in place to deal with it. Police. Courts. Justice. But when the person wearing the badge becomes the criminal? When the man sworn to uphold the law decides he's above it? When the sheriff of your county uses his power not to protect people, but to destroy them? There's no system for that. There's no one to call. There's no higher authority that gives a damn about your small town and your corrupt sheriff. And that's when regular people have to become something else. Have to do things they never thought they'd do. Have to risk everything to make it right. My name is James Thornton. Jim to most people. I'm 68 years old, and I spent 35 years in law enforcement. Started as a patrol officer in 1977. Made detective in 82. Became a deputy sheriff in 85. Retired 3 years ago with a clean record, a pension, and the satisfaction of knowing I'd done my job with honor. Put criminals in jail. Protected innocent people. Served my community. Never made sheriff, though. Not because I wasn't qualified. Not because I didn't have the experience or the respect of my fellow officers. But because I wouldn't play politics. Wouldn't kiss the right asses. Wouldn't look the other way when someone with connections broke the law. In small-town law enforcement, that matters more than competence. More than integrity. More than 35 years of service. So when the position of sheriff came open in 2015, they gave it to Wade Dalton. Let me tell you about Wade. Guy was 42 years old. Had been a deputy for 12 years. Good-looking. Charismatic. Came from a family with money and connections. His uncle was on the county commission. His father owned half the commercial real estate in town. His brother-in-law was a state senator. Wade knew how to work a room. Knew how to make people like him. Knew exactly what to say to get what he wanted. And what he wanted was power. See, some people become cops because they want to serve. They want to protect. They want to make a difference. Wade became a cop because he liked having authority over people. Liked the uniform. Liked the gun. Liked being able to tell people what to do and have them do it or face consequences. But being a deputy wasn't enough for Wade. He wanted more. He wanted the badge. The title. The absolute authority that comes with being the highest law enforcement officer in the county. And in 2015, he got it. I voted against him in the election. So did a lot of the other deputies. We knew what he was. We'd worked with him. We'd seen how he treated people. How he bent rules. How he used his position for personal gain. But the voters didn't know. They saw a young, energetic candidate with a famous name promising to be tough on crime. And they ate it up. Wade won by 18 points. And for the first year, everything seemed fine. Crime rates stayed steady. No major scandals. Wade played the part well. Did the photo ops. Showed up at community events. Made himself visible and accessible. But those of us still on the force. We started noticing things. Evidence would go missing from the property room. Arrest reports would be altered after the fact. Suspects would claim they'd been threatened or roughed up, but there'd be no documentation. No body cam footage. No witnesses. And Wade's arrest numbers were incredible. Way higher than they should have been. He was personally making more felony arrests than the rest of the department combined. At first, I thought maybe he was just ambitious. Working harder. Spending more time on the street. But then I noticed something else. The people Wade was arresting. They all had something in common. They'd crossed him somehow. Testified against someone he wanted to protect. Bought property he wanted. Dated someone he was interested in. Made him look bad in public. And suddenly, they'd get pulled over and boom, drugs in the car. Search warrant on their house, stolen property in the garage. Anonymous tip, illegal firearms in the basement. Every single time, Wade would be the arresting officer. Every single time, the evidence would be overwhelming. And every single time, the defendant would swear they'd been set up. That the drugs, the stolen goods, the weapons, none of it was theirs. That Wade had planted it. But who's a judge going to believe? A sheriff with a badge and a clean record? Or a defendant with everything to lose? The convictions piled up. Wade's reputation grew. Tough on crime. Getting dangerous people off the streets. Making the county safer. Except he wasn't. He was destroying innocent lives to settle petty grudges and protect his own criminal enterprise. And I couldn't prove it. Not yet. Not without risking my own career. Not without putting a target on my back. So I kept my head down. Finished my last 2 years. Took my pension. Retired with a clean record. And I told myself I'd done what I could. That it wasn't my problem anymore. That someone else would figure it out eventually. Then they came for Danny Martinez. Danny was my neighbor's kid. 23 years old. Good kid. Worked construction. Went to community college part-time studying to be an electrician. Helped his mom with the bills after his dad died. Coached Little League on weekends. One Friday night, Danny was driving home from his girlfriend's house. Got pulled over by Sheriff Dalton for a broken taillight. Wade searched the car. Found 3 ounces of methamphetamine in the trunk. Hidden in the wheel well. Danny was arrested. Charged with possession with intent to distribute. Held on $50,000 bail. His mom couldn't afford it. Couldn't afford a lawyer either. Danny got a public defender who had 90 other cases. And Danny swore on his father's grave, that he'd never seen those drugs before in his life. That Wade had planted them. His mom came to me crying. Begging me to help. I'd known Danny since he was 6 years old. Watched him grow up. He was a good kid. Straight edge. Didn't even drink. I looked her in the eye and I saw the truth. Her son was innocent. And Wade Dalton had framed him. But I asked her the question I already knew the answer to: why would the sheriff target Danny? She hesitated. Then she told me. 2 months earlier, Danny had been driving home late from work. Saw a county sheriff's vehicle parked behind an abandoned warehouse on Route 9. Thought maybe an officer needed help. Pulled in to check. Found Sheriff Dalton loading boxes into the trunk of his personal car. Civilian car. No markings. Just Wade in plain clothes, moving boxes from an evidence van into his trunk. Danny called out. Asked if everything was okay. Wade spun around. Saw Danny. And in that moment, Danny said he saw something in Wade's eyes. Something cold. Something calculating. Wade smiled. Said everything was fine. Just moving some old case files. Told Danny to have a good night. Drove off. Danny thought it was weird but didn't think much of it. Mentioned it to his mom. She told him to forget about it. Don't cause trouble. But Wade couldn't forget it. Because Danny had seen something he wasn't supposed to see. Had witnessed Wade moving evidence out of official custody. Had become a liability. So Wade waited. Bided his time. And then he planted drugs in Danny's car. Arrested him. And now Danny was looking at 10 to 15 years
he'd
in
been in the
prison
wrong
for a
place
crime
at the
he
wrong
didn't
time
commit and seen something a corrupt sheriff couldn't afford to have seen. That's when I knew. That's when I realized that retiring and staying quiet made me complicit. Made me part of the problem. Because if good cops stay silent in the face of corruption, then there are no good cops. Just accomplices. So I made a decision. I was going to take Wade Dalton down. I was going to expose him. I was going to make sure he lost his badge, his freedom, and his ability to hurt anyone ever again. But I couldn't do it alone. And I couldn't do it the official way. Because Wade had spent 4 years building a network of protection. He had allies in the department. He had connections in the DA's office. He had judges who owed him favors. Going through official channels would just tip him off. Give him time to cover his tracks. Destroy evidence. Intimidate witnesses. No, if I was going to bring Wade down, I needed to be smarter. Needed to be patient. Needed to build an airtight case that he couldn't weasel out of. So I started investigating. Quietly. Carefully. Using every skill I'd learned in 35 years of law enforcement. First, I made a list. Every arrest Wade had personally made in the last 4 years. Every search he'd conducted. Every piece of evidence he'd found. Then I cross-referenced it with complaints. With lawsuits. With allegations of planted evidence and false arrest. The pattern was obvious. 37 arrests in 4 years where the defendant claimed the evidence had been planted. 37 cases where Wade was the primary arresting officer. 37 people whose lives had been destroyed. But claims aren't proof. Defendants always say they're innocent. That's not enough to build a case against a sheriff. So I started reaching out to those defendants. The ones who'd been released. The ones still in prison. The ones on probation. And I listened to their stories. Marcus Williams. 28. Arrested after Wade found stolen electronics in his storage unit. Marcus had just won a lawsuit against the county for excessive force Wade had used during a traffic stop 2 years earlier. 2 weeks after Marcus got his settlement check, Wade raided his storage unit. Marcus lost everything. The settlement money went to legal fees. He did 3 years in prison. Jennifer Kowalski. 35. Arrested after Wade discovered cocaine in her car during a routine traffic stop. Jennifer was a paralegal working on a civil suit against the county, a suit alleging that Sheriff Dalton had sexually harassed a female deputy. The deputy was Jennifer's cousin. 1 week before the deposition, Jennifer was arrested. The cousin dropped the lawsuit. Jennifer lost her job, her house, and custody of her daughter. Raymond Torres. 41. Arrested after Wade found stolen firearms in his garage. Raymond was a county commissioner who'd voted against a budget increase for the sheriff's department. The increase would have given Wade a raise and more discretionary funds. Raymond was arrested 3 days after the vote. He resigned from the commission as part of a plea deal. Served 18 months. On and on. Story after story. Lives destroyed. Families ruined. All to protect Wade's power, his income, and his secrets. But stories aren't enough. I needed physical evidence. I needed to prove Wade was dirty. So I started surveillance. Old-fashioned detective work. I watched Wade. Followed him. Documented his movements. And I found the warehouse on Route 9. The one Danny had seen Wade at. I set up a camera. Hidden. High resolution. Pointed at the back entrance. And I waited. 3 weeks later, Wade showed up. 2 in the morning. Civilian clothes. Unmarked car. He opened the warehouse with a key. Went inside. Came out 20 minutes later carrying a box. I had it on video. The sheriff of our county accessing what I later discovered was an evidence storage overflow facility. At 2 in the morning. Alone. No logs. No witnesses. No official business. But that wasn't enough. I needed to know what was in that warehouse. What Wade was taking. What he was doing with it. So I called in a favor. An old friend from my detective days. Guy who worked in county records. I asked him to pull the logs for that facility. Who accessed it? When? Why? According to official records, the facility hadn't been accessed in 6 months. The lock had been changed after a break-in. Only 3 people had keys, the county clerk, the evidence custodian, and the sheriff. But the logs showed 0 visits. 0 activity. The facility was supposed to be empty. Waiting to be decommissioned. Except it wasn't empty. Wade was using it. And he was using it off the books. I needed to get inside that warehouse. Needed to see what Wade was storing there. What he was stealing. What he was using to frame innocent people. But breaking into a county evidence facility? That's a crime. Even for a retired deputy. Even for a good reason. So I waited for another opportunity. And I found it. 2 days later, Wade showed up again. Same routine. 2 in the morning. I watched from a distance. Watched him unlock the door. Watched him go inside. And then I did something risky. Something that could have ended badly. I approached the building. Quietly. Carefully. I wedged a small piece of plastic into the door frame. Just enough to keep it from latching when Wade closed it behind him. Then I waited. Hidden in the shadows. 20 minutes later, Wade came out. Locked the door, or thought he did. Got in his car. Drove away. I waited 10 minutes to make sure he wasn't coming back. Then I approached the door. It was unlocked. My plastic wedge wasn't empty. I went inside. Shelves and shelves of evidence. And what I found made my blood run cold. None of it was catalogued. None of it was official. Drugs. Thousands of dollars worth. Cocaine. Meth. Heroin. All of it bagged. All of it labeled with case numbers that didn't exist. Stolen property. Electronics. Jewelry. Firearms. All of it supposedly recovered from crime scenes. But none of it registered in the official evidence system. And cash. Stacks and stacks of cash. Rubber banded. Boxed. Stored on shelves like inventory in a warehouse. This wasn't just evidence tampering. This was a criminal enterprise. Wade was stealing from suspects. Keeping drugs to plant on future targets. Hoarding cash to fund his lifestyle. And using his position as sheriff to do it all with impunity. I took photos. Hundreds of them. Every shelf. Every box. Every bag. Every piece of evidence with every visible label and marking. And then I got the hell out of there before Wade realized his door hadn't locked. I had evidence now. Real evidence. Proof that Wade was corrupt. Proof that he was using his badge to commit crimes. But I still couldn't go to the DA. Couldn't go to Internal Affairs. Because I'd obtained this evidence illegally. I'd broken into a county facility. Any lawyer worth their salt would get it thrown out. Would get Wade off on a technicality. No, I needed Wade to incriminate himself. Needed him to get caught red-handed. Needed him to make a mistake. And then Danny's trial date got set. 3 months out. 3 months to build a case that would save an innocent kid and expose a corrupt sheriff. I reached out to some old colleagues. Deputies I trusted. Guys who'd retired. Guys who'd transferred to other departments. Guys who'd always suspected Wade but didn't have proof. I showed them the photos. Told them the plan. And every single one of them said the same thing, I'm in. Tell me what you need. We formed a team. 6 retired cops. All with decades of experience. All with clean records. All with a shared hatred of dirty cops. We divided up the work. One guy tracked Wade's finances. Found accounts he shouldn't have. Found purchases he couldn't afford on a sheriff's salary. Found properties registered to shell companies that traced back to Wade's family. Another guy interviewed victims. Got sworn statements. Got them to agree to testify if we could guarantee protection. A third guy worked his contacts in federal law enforcement. Because at some point, we knew this had to go federal. Local authorities were too compromised. We needed the FBI. The U.S. Attorney's Office. Someone who couldn't be bought or intimidated. And I kept watching Wade. Kept documenting. Kept waiting for him to slip up. The break came 6 weeks before Danny's trial. Wade arrested another kid. 19-year-old named Tyler Morrison. College student. No record. Clean kid. Wade claimed he'd pulled Tyler over for speeding. Found a pound of cocaine in the trunk. Tyler's father was Lawrence Morrison. A defense attorney. A good one. One who'd successfully defended several clients against Wade's arrests. One who'd made Wade look bad on the stand multiple times. Wade had just gone after the son to punish the father. But Lawrence Morrison wasn't some broke parent who couldn't afford to fight back. He had resources. He had connections. And he had a grudge. When Tyler was arrested, Lawrence called me. We'd worked together on cases years ago. He knew I was retired. Knew I'd had issues with Wade. And he asked me point blank, is my son being set up? I told him yes. Told him everything. Showed him everything. And Lawrence said, let's bury this son of a bitch. We brought in a private investigator. A former FBI agent. Guy who specialized in police corruption cases. Guy who knew how to build federal cases. We gave him everything we had. The photos. The witness statements. The financial records. The pattern of arrests. And he made some calls. To friends still at the Bureau. To assistant U.S. attorneys who prosecuted corruption. To people who gave a damn about bent cops. 2 weeks later, the FBI opened an official investigation into Sheriff Wade Dalton. But they didn't tip their hand. Didn't let Wade know he was being investigated. Just started quietly building a case. Interviewing witnesses. Subpoenaing records. Watching. And while they built their case, we built ours. We needed to catch Wade in the act. Needed him on video. Needed evidence so clear, so undeniable, that not even his expensive lawyers could explain it away. So we set a trap. Lawrence Morrison had a son, Tyler, facing serious charges. Charges that Wade had manufactured. What if we gave Wade another target? Another Morrison? Another opportunity to frame someone and settle a grudge? Lawrence's nephew, 24-year-old named Marcus Morrison. Clean record. Good job. No connection to law enforcement or the legal system. We created a scenario. A fake conflict between Marcus and Wade. Made it public. Made sure Wade knew about it. Marcus filed a complaint against Wade. Claimed excessive force during a traffic stop that hadn't actually happened. But Wade didn't know that. To Wade, this was just another civilian accusing him of misconduct. Another person who needed to be taught a lesson. We knew Wade's pattern. Knew how he operated. He'd wait a few weeks. Let things cool down. Then he'd manufacture probable cause. Pull Marcus over. Find evidence. Arrest him. So we prepared. We put cameras in Marcus's car. Multiple angles. Hidden. Recording everything. We tracked Marcus's movements. Made sure we knew where he was every minute of every day. And we waited for Wade to take the bait. It took 3 weeks. Marcus was driving home from work on a Tuesday evening. Quiet road. Light traffic. Wade's patrol car pulled in behind him. Lights on. Marcus pulled over. Kept his hands on the wheel. Everything by the book. Wade approached the driver's window. Professional. Polite. Asked for license and registration. Marcus provided them. Stayed calm. Respectful. Wade went back to his patrol car. Ran the license. Came back 5 minutes later. Sir, I'm going to need you to step out of the vehicle. I have reasonable suspicion that there may be contraband in your car. Marcus stayed calm. On what basis, Sheriff? I smell marijuana coming from the vehicle. I don't smoke marijuana, Sheriff. And I don't consent to any searches. I don't need your consent. I have probable cause. Step out of the vehicle. Now. Marcus complied. Stepped out. Hands visible. Wade searched the car. Front seat. Back seat. Glove compartment. Then he popped the trunk. And this is where it got interesting. Because we'd anticipated this. We'd put multiple cameras in that trunk. Pointed at the interior. High resolution. Recording everything. Wade opened the trunk. Looked inside. Saw nothing. He went to his patrol car. Came back with a small duffel bag. He opened the duffel bag. Pulled out a brick of cocaine. Still wrapped. Still sealed. And then, clear as day on our cameras, Wade placed that cocaine in Marcus's trunk. Buried it under the spare tire. Arranged some tools around it to make it look hidden. Then he stepped back. Pulled out his phone. Took a photo. Evidence of contraband in plain view. He arrested Marcus. Charged him with possession with intent to distribute. And we had the entire thing on video. From 4 different angles. Crystal clear. Undeniable. Wade putting drugs into Marcus's trunk. Wade manufacturing evidence. Wade framing an innocent man. We turned that video over to the FBI that night. The next morning, federal agents executed a search warrant on the warehouse on Route 9. They found everything I'd photographed. Every piece of stolen evidence. Every bag of drugs. Every dollar of cash. They executed search warrants on Wade's home. His office. His vehicles. They seized his computers. His phones. His files. And they arrested Sheriff Wade Dalton on 43 federal charges including evidence tampering, deprivation of rights under color of law, theft of government property, drug possession, obstruction of justice, and conspiracy. The arrest was public. Broadcast on every local news channel. Sheriff Wade Dalton in handcuffs. Badge removed. Gun taken. Led into a federal courthouse to face charges that would send him to prison for the rest of his life. The county went into shock. The media went crazy. And every single person Wade had ever arrested started calling lawyers, filing appeals, demanding their cases be reviewed. Danny Martinez's charges were dropped immediately. So were Tyler Morrison's, Marcus Morrison's, and 34 others. The DA's office launched a review of every case Wade had touched in 4 years. Hundreds of cases. Thousands of hours of work. All of it tainted by a corrupt sheriff. Wade's trial took 8 months. The evidence was overwhelming. The FBI had everything. The videos. The photos. The witness statements. The financial records. Wade's lawyers tried every trick. Tried to suppress evidence. Tried to discredit witnesses. Tried to claim Wade was being targeted by a conspiracy of bitter ex-cops. But you can't argue with video. You can't explain away footage of yourself planting drugs in an innocent man's car. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Found Wade guilty on all 43 counts. He was sentenced to 32 years in federal prison. No parole. No early release. The badge that he'd used to destroy lives. That badge was taken from him. Publicly. Ceremonially. In the courtroom. Removed from a frame and handed to the U.S. attorney as evidence of corruption. Wade Dalton would never wear a badge again. Never have authority over another human being. Never use the law as a weapon. He'd spend the next 3 decades in a federal prison. Surrounded by the same kinds of criminals he'd once pretended to fight. And me? I testified at his trial. Told the jury everything. Explained how I'd investigated. How I'd documented. How I'd built the case. Wade's lawyers tried to make me look like a vigilante. Like a bitter ex-cop with a grudge. But the jury saw through it. Saw me for what I was, a cop who'd kept his oath. Who'd refused to look the other way. Who'd done what was right even when it was hard. After the verdict, the judge called me into chambers. Thanked me privately. Said that without my work, Wade would still be out there. Still be destroying lives. Still be hiding behind a badge. And that meant everything. Because that's why I became a cop in the first place. Not for the glory. Not for the authority. But to protect people. To serve justice. To make sure the system worked the way it was supposed to. Wade Dalton forgot that. Forgot what the badge meant. What it represented. The trust that people place in law enforcement. He turned that badge into a weapon. Used it to lie, to steal, to frame innocent people. Used it to protect himself while destroying others. And in the end, that same badge became the symbol of his downfall. The proof of his corruption. The evidence that sent him to prison. So let me ask you, who polices the police? In a perfect world, they police themselves. Internal affairs. Professional standards. Good cops holding bad cops accountable. But we don't live in a perfect world. And sometimes, good cops are outnumbered. Or intimidated. Or compromised. Or they've retired and moved on. And that's when regular people have to step up. Have to pay attention. Have to ask questions. Have to demand accountability. Because a badge doesn't make you above the law. It makes you a servant of the law. And if you betray that trust, if you use that badge to commit crimes instead of prevent them, then you deserve to lose it. Wade Dalton learned that lesson. Learned it in a federal courtroom in front of a jury of his peers. Learned it when they took his badge and his freedom. And every cop who ever thought about crossing that line, they learned it too. They learned that someone is always watching. Someone is always paying attention. And eventually, the truth catches up. I'm 68 years old now. 3 years retired. Living on a pension and the satisfaction of knowing I did the right thing. Danny Martinez is finishing his degree. Going to be an electrician. Maybe go into business for himself someday. He still comes by to help his mom. Still coaches Little League. Still the same good kid he always was. Just older. Wiser. More careful about who he trusts. And Wade Dalton? He's in year 3 of 32. 11 more years before he's even eligible to petition for release. And that petition will be denied. Guaranteed. He'll die in prison. And his legacy won't be the arrests he made or the crimes he solved. It'll be the lives he destroyed. The people he framed. The trust he betrayed. That's what happens when you abuse power. When you think the badge makes you invincible. When you forget that you're supposed to serve people, not rule them. So here's my message to anyone in law enforcement watching this: the badge is a privilege. Not a right. And it can be taken away. Will be taken away if you abuse it. And to everyone else, don't assume that a badge means someone is trustworthy. Don't assume that a uniform means someone is honest. Pay attention. Ask questions. Demand accountability. Because the only thing that keeps cops honest is citizens who refuse to look the other way. Citizens who stand up. Citizens who demand justice. Wade Dalton thought he was untouchable. Thought his connections and his badge would protect him forever. He was wrong. And I made sure of it. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever dealt with police corruption? Have you ever been falsely accused? Or maybe you're in law enforcement and you've seen the thin blue line protect bad cops. Share your story in the comments. Because this conversation matters. Because accountability matters. Because justice only works if we all participate in it. This is GranPa's Confession. And I'm Jim Thornton, reminding you that no one, is above the law. Not even the people sworn to uphold it. The badge doesn't make you the law. It makes you a servant of the law. And if you forget that, someone like me will be there to remind you. With evidence. With patience. And with justice. Wade Dalton's missing badge isn't in some evidence locker. It's in a federal courthouse. Filed as Exhibit A in a corruption case. A reminder that power without accountability is tyranny. And tyrants, no matter what uniform they wear, eventually fall. That's my confession. That's my story. And if you're a cop who's thinking about crossing that line, about planting evidence or lying on a report or using your badge to settle a grudge, remember Wade Dalton. Remember his missing badge. Remember where he is right now. And ask yourself, is it worth it? Because I promise you, someone is watching. Someone is paying attention. And someone will hold you accountable. Even if it takes 35 years of experience, 6 retired cops, and 1 very patient old man. Justice doesn't have a statute of limitations. And neither does accountability.